Hi there, I'm Adam Leventhal. Welcome to the preview on the Athletic FC. Arsenal, Liverpool at the Emirates is the big one this weekend, and we will also be setting you up for all of the other Premier League action as well. With me this week is Tim Spiers. How are you, Tim?
How do?
How do to you too. And Nick Miller is here as well. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you very much for asking, Nick. Ready to look ahead to the setup this weekend, which is a 1-5-4 from Friday to Sunday. We've got the Friday night football, which is Leicester against Forest. 4 Saturday 3 p.m.s or 10 a.m. in the States, Eastern. Brentford, Ipswich, Villa, Bournemouth, Man City, Southampton and Brighton Wolves. The 5:30 or 12:30 on Saturday is Everton, Fulham. Then on to Sunday, 2 p.m.s or 9 a.m.s. That's Palace, Spurs, Chelsea, Newcastle, West Ham, Manchester United, then Arsenal against Liverpool, 4:30 or 11:30 at the Emirates. And that is where we're going to start. So, Liverpool are top of the Premier League. They're 1 point clear of Manchester City, 4 clear of Arsenal in third, and also on points, Aston Villa in fourth. And let's set the scene by checking in with Ian Stone and James McNicholas on our Arsenal pod handbrake off, just to see how they're feeling.
I hate must-win games because, you know what, when you start talking about must-win games, it's October. But at the same time, I think we all mustn't lose, right?
Yeah, I certainly think that. If we lose, 7 points is the gap to Liverpool, right? And I've basically already decided that Man City are going to absolutely batter Southampton, so 6 points to City as well. I think it would make for pretty ugly reading in terms of the title race. Not insurmountable, nothing's insurmountable in October, and let's have that perspective. But I do think this is a game Arsenal need to get something from, and I think a win would really kind of send a bit of a message and make a bit of a statement.
So obviously Ian and James are very keen for Arsenal to win, but if Liverpool do and they open up a 7-point gap, what's the impact of that at this stage of the season? And also considering what Arsenal have been doing this season so far.
If Liverpool were to win, I think it'd be a pretty devastating blow to Arsenal's title hopes. Just going on recent history and the fact that they'll probably need 90 points minimum and they've already dropped 7. So if you're looking for 90 minimum, the maximum you can earn in one season is 114. Their maximum is now 107 already.
Yeah.
And it could be down to 104 if they lose at the weekend. So what I'm trying to say is, why you smile at me?
Well, no, you know what? Why I'm smiling?
Go on.
When I finish a point.
No, you've interrupted me.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. But if you're watching this on YouTube, we film this in a black studio. I'm looking at Tim. And, judging by my age, I remember the days when classrooms used to have chalk on a blackboard. And it was almost like being in a maths lesson there, Tim, because it was really interesting, your mathematical analysis of the points. But I've broken in and I've stolen your flow. I'm sorry.
It's fairly basic sort of year 4 maths.
Yeah, but that's when I sort of revert back to in terms of my level now.
I think I've finished my point.
It is. It is. I still haven't quite, even though it's been the case for a few years now, I still haven't quite got used to the idea of it. You still have to get 90 odd points to even have a sniff of winning the title. But, as a man who remembers, I think United won it was 79 one year in the sort of late 90s or early 2000s. So, it is ludicrous that what Manchester City have done to set this kind of bar as to what you need to do to even get close to winning the league.
Well, and conversely, teams have gone down with 40 points, whereas now, because it's so stretched out, you need far fewer points to stay up. So it's had an impact on both ends of the table. But if you look at the fact Arsenal have dropped points in 3 games already, if they were to drop points here, then they go to sort of Newcastle and Chelsea away. Their next 2 games, you're sort of looking at those both as must win. So I'd be a bit concerned if I was an Arsenal supporter at this stage, with their recent run, sort of getting through the Leicester and Southampton games unconvincingly, obviously losing to Bournemouth. If you City, that generally doesn't happen. So, but I guess they've got to use the Bournemouth defeat as a bit of a wake-up call for what they shouldn't be doing at this stage.
Well, Mikel Arteta has approached games with quite a lot of caution this season. Do you think that he has to sort of change that tack, especially because he's at home against Liverpool?
I think
I'm pretty sure this game is that Arsenal will make this game horrible, and because of the injuries that they've got, which we make them onto, and this attitude, as the guys from Handbrake Off said, of it being a kind of must not lose game. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be quite second half of Man City away, but I think it will be of that kind of oeuvre. Obviously, Mikel Arteta has adopted a slightly, in games other than City, has adopted a slightly more, whatever it takes to win attitude. I think that's going to be emphatically the case against Liverpool.
I suppose this shouldn't come as much of a surprise that Arsenal have dropped points in all of the games that they've gone down to 10 men in: Brighton, City and Bournemouth, their last game. So that's 3 in 8 games. And the last team to win the league, picking up 3 red cards, was Leicester in 2015. And Arsenal have reached that tally already. So we don't need to go into the details and analyse the circumstances of Rice being sent off, Trossard being sent off and Saliba being sent off. But is it a disciplinary problem, or have they just got unlucky on 3 occasions?
Most red cards this season, the stat that flashed up on Match of the Day last weekend, most red cards since Boxing Day 2019 by a distance, 5 more than any other team. Is that a coincidence? Probably not. Is it a conspiracy? No, I'm going to say no.
Depends what seat you're sitting in.
Yeah, exactly. But
I didn't like the pause that you left between. There's people are going to fill that gap.
I just wanted to see what your face did, and you responded, beautifully.
Yeah.
I think you have to say yes to discipline. I think there's a bit of a culture that's been deliberately generated, not to get sent off, but to have this kind of, Well, Arteta said in March we need to do the dark arts better after they lost at Porto. I think the problem is obviously when you cross the line and just blame others, but rather than recognising it's perhaps an issue, from within. But this whole sort of you versus us culture, it's no bad thing. It can sort of help spur you on to a trophy. But this whole, world hates us, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But the whole win at all costs is probably not feasible. I think Arteta probably plays into that with his sort of touchline antics. They feel they can push the boundaries. And as a byproduct of that, maybe this is where all the red cards come from.
They're not dark arting particularly well then at the moment, are they?
Well, they did at Man City for most of the half.
But they still got a player sent off, and they had their wings clipped.
That second half was almost a masterpiece.
I think that a better sort of indicator of someone having a team having a sort of systemic discipline problem is number of bookings rather than red cards.
Okay.
I know he said we're not going to kind of litigate all the red cards again, and let's not.
Have you got the stats?
But Arsenal have had 18 yellow cards so far this season, and only 3 teams have fewer than them. Everton, I'm surprised by this. Everton have had the fewest yellow cards this season with 13. Do you know who has the most with 30?
Yeah, that's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, Chelsea. Chelsea have had 30 players booked this season. Now, it might be the case that, as Tim said, this kind of the new win at all costs, dark arts, yada thing has resulted in the 3 red cards that they have, and obviously those 3 red cards are going to be much more costly than a string of yellow cards might be. But I don't necessarily think that Arsenal do have a real disciplinary problem.
Well, we know Saliba isn't going to be playing, obviously, after his sending off against Bournemouth. There are other defensive doubts for Arsenal. It's going to test the depth of their squad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be a proper sort of patchwork defence. Calafiori might be out, Timber, Tomiyasu out. It looks like, as happened in the second half, I think in midweek, Thomas Partey will play right back, which is kind of... Arteta has done that voluntarily before. I think Partey played nominally at right back against Southampton, and it's to a point it makes sense from a tactical point of view, because obviously Arsenal have their fullbacks to move into midfield, which Partey is obviously very comfortable doing. But it's still going to be a pretty patchwork defence. Presumably Ben White's going to move into the middle, and then Partey at right back and someone else at left back. So yeah. Tricky one.
Yeah.
But still not too bad, I think. You bring in Zinchenko, multiple Premier League winner at left back, Ben White, very good centre half. It's Partey at right back's the issue, which Liverpool will, if he plays there, which Liverpool will look to exploit.
Zinchenko against Salah.
Yeah, but this is the whole point of why it's not a 11-man game anymore. Do you know what I mean? They haven't got too many players out. It's not a crisis, so they're just gonna have to deal with it, Adam.
You got to roll with the punches, haven't you, Tim? Haven't you, Tim?
Yes.
Sorry, there's a delay on the line. Good. So
this was a podcast.
Yeah. It's always good to interact. Let's now interact with the Athletic's Michael Cox on what he noticed at Anfield last weekend. Liverpool obviously beat Chelsea 2-1, and how Sunday's fixture may compare tactically.
For long periods of Liverpool's 2-1 victory over Chelsea last weekend, Liverpool didn't quite feel like Liverpool. We're used to them pressing high up the pitch, being very intense, trying to regain possession in the final third. But actually against Chelsea last weekend, they stood off. They let Chelsea's defenders have the ball. They focused more on trying to prevent passes from the defenders into the midfielders. That is basically what Arne Slot wants, but it wasn't entirely convincing against Chelsea, particularly when Malo Gusto, who started at left back but moved inside into central midfield, took up some really clever positions between the lines. Chelsea played through Liverpool very easily. Things might be different this weekend against Arsenal. You think of Arsenal as a very good possession-based side, able to pass the ball through the centre of the pitch very easily. But actually without Martin Ødegaard this season, they have struggled to do that. And although it wasn't really what everyone was talking about after the 2-0 defeat to Bournemouth last weekend, Mikel Arteta's team selection for that game was very defensive. It was pretty much 4 centre-backs and 3 holding midfielders. Bukayo Saka will probably be back this weekend, and in a way he might play the Malo Gusto role, not necessarily in terms of his strict positioning, but in terms of going from outside to in and being able to receive diagonal passes through the lines. Liverpool might be a little bit more intense this weekend. After all, last weekend's game was played after an international break and lots of players returned, probably far from 100% fit. But I do feel like in big games, Liverpool will need to show a little bit more intensity to win the ball higher up the pitch and to prevent the opposition playing through midfield quite so easily.
So interesting thoughts there from Michael Cox. Obviously mentioning about Bukayo Saka. That would be great for Arsenal if he is back in the lineup. It may well be a game for Gabriel Martinelli to shine in. And it usually is, according to the statistics, against Liverpool. 7 goal involvements, that's 5 goals, 2 assists against Liverpool, his favourite opponents. He forced the own goal against Shakhtar in midweek. And basically, he just needs to channel his inner Callum Hudson-Odoi against Liverpool.
Don't we all?
Yeah, absolutely. As you predicted, that was the only time that Liverpool have been beaten this season by your own Nottingham Forest. So that's basically this is such rudimentary analysis. So he basically just needs to cut in and score, and that's where Liverpool have a weakness, and he needs to do that for Arsenal this weekend, yeah?
Brilliant. Yeah, do you want to give them a shout?
Message him?
Yeah, just tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Score a goal, and there you go.
Yeah. But is there, more seriously, obviously, is there a weakness there off that side for Liverpool? They're not showing it with the goals that they're conceding at the moment, obviously, which is only a handful.
Yeah, 3. I think they're on pace to, and they won't do this, but they are on pace to beat Chelsea's famous record for not conceding goals. I don't really think there's anything particularly structural there. I know people doubt Trent Alexander-Arnold's defensive ability sometimes, but I don't think you can kind of. You're giving Tim a look.
I haven't seen someone bristle quite so so visibly. I think Tim, when you mentioned Trent Alexander-Arnold and his defensive abilities,
I wasn't questioning them. Many people are saying
you just sort of mentioned them.
Yeah.
And now I want to know what Tim thinks about them, because he literally Oh, what? Come on, what?
I'm really sorry to disappoint you.
Oh, no.
I literally just finished the thing that I was reading, and then I'm going to look at Nick for a bit.
Oh, right. That was you concentrating, was it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's just how I bristle.
Okay. Well, you've watched a lot of England. Is that still a concern, or has he completely kicked them into touch in terms of
his defensive inadequacies? Yeah. Well, no. If you saw the Finland game recently, albeit he was at left back, but he was doing some very basic stuff very badly. So yeah, of course he's got that in him, but But what you get with Trent is all the other good stuff,
Which is more important?
which balances out, which more than balances it out, in my opinion.
Okay, well, we covered off Arsenal. Next, we're going to have a look at Liverpool. So there was also a 1-0 win for Liverpool in the Champions League, just like Arsenal. Liverpool at RB Leipzig. 11 wins from 12 for the first time in the club's history to start the season. Here's James Pearce, our purring Liverpool correspondent.
Liverpool head for the Emirates on Sunday in excellent shape. I think the caveat before the international break was that Arne Slot's side hadn't really played anyone, that the fixture list had been kind to them, but that no longer applies. They've beaten Chelsea, they've beaten RB Leipzig, who are only off the top of the Bundesliga on goal difference. What struck me most about the win in midweek at the Red Bull Arena in Leipzig was just the control they exerted for long periods. That stadium was buoyant before the game and early on as Leipzig started pretty positively. But once Darwin Núñez poked Liverpool in front, they really quietened that crowd down and they limited them to very few chances. Yes, it got a little bit ragged late on and Kevin Kelleher had to make a couple of big saves. But this is a Liverpool team that just looks so well drilled, so well coached defensively. 5 goals conceded in 12 matches so far, 7 clean sheets. No one has scored more than once against Liverpool in a game so far this season. Absolutely mouthwatering what's in store at the Emirates on Sunday. It's Liverpool's biggest test so far, yet they keep on coming up with the answers.
They do indeed. James Pearce sounds excited, doesn't he? He sounds like this is going to be another big season for Liverpool. Do you agree with everything that he said there, that this week in particular has sort of, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the Champions League longer term, but the win against Chelsea has sort of rubber stamped the fact that they're going to stay the course this season?
Yeah, and it sort of confirms their sort of new identity for me. It was quite an unusual game to watch. It was very sort of calm. Anfield was quite quiet. Chelsea came out strong in the second half and Liverpool just shut the game down and they barely created a chance of note after that and just sort of got the job done with minimal fuss. It's very sort of different to the Liverpool we've known in the past. They've managed to create this new identity very quickly and efficiently, despite having exactly the same squad. I can't really remember a similar example of that happening in the past, certainly with one of the big teams. It speaks a lot to not just what Slot has done, but also I guess the professionalism within the group, being able to manage the dressing room themselves and also, not letting their standards drop at all. The only thing I would say in terms of testing this Liverpool team and what do we know about them is that they've only gone behind once so far in the Premier League this season, which was against his boys, and they lost. So they're very, very good at sort of taking the lead and then seeing a game out with sort of exceptional game management. But I'd really like to see an Arsenal. I'd like to see the Arsenal take the lead at the weekend. I think that would be the ultimate test for Liverpool if they can chase the game.
It's quite funny that Slot, certainly in the kind of early weeks, was doing the whole, well, I'd be pretty silly if I tried to change too much too radically, wouldn't I? And he's completely changed their kind of style of play. I know this is not going to sound like a compliment, but it is a bit of a compliment. They're not very interesting to watch now because they do tend to control games fairly easily. Whereas, obviously before it was a little bit more chaotic and more entertaining to watch, really. But yeah, as Tim says, see how they would react to things not going to plan against you can, if they were to go behind and then not do anything against Arsenal, you could sort of see it. You could sort of write the Forest game off as a bit of a an anomaly, and those games happen, and sometimes then you can't really do anything about that. But if it starts happening over and over again, then it becomes more of a sort of pattern and more of a systemic problem, I guess.
I have a question for Nick. You know how Liverpool used to be known as like rock and roll football? Why is it now?
Interesting.
I have a take.
Do you?
Yeah. Why didn't I get asked?
I'm thinking
because you're the host.
All right. Carry on.
Maybe that kind of in the early 2000s there was that sort of chill out 07 stuff.
We like 07. He's got him on his wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I met the guys from 07.
Here he goes,
couple
his name dropped.
couple of years
Met
ago.
the 07 guys, so you know.
Yeah, I met the zero. Well, they were on a show that I was doing, a music show actually. Yeah.
What was that called?
It was called The Lounge.
There you go.
It's called The Lounge. Yeah.
What's
Anyway,
so? What were you?
carry on.
I was also going early 2000s.
Yeah.
I was going to say Strokes because it's sort of
Right.
it's not hugely dissimilar because it's the same personnel as before, but they're sort of all in time. They're all very organised and disciplined.
Yeah.
But it all works together as a team, and it sounds and looks,
Yeah.
great.
Quite tight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Tight, disciplined.
In terms of controlling games,
Yeah.
going to a hot atmosphere as Liverpool did in Germany this week, it's a good sort of dress rehearsal that they've had in the Champions League for going to Arsenal. Basically, just roll it out again, just go again, lads.
Yeah, it was as kind of James alluded to when we heard from him there. It was quite controlled, and again, it was quite. I regretted my decision to watch that game because it wasn't very interesting up until about 10-15 minutes to go, where Kelleher had to make a couple of saves. Leipzig had a couple of chances. There was, I think it was a Pender right at the end, inexplicably passed when he had a fairly clear shot on goal. So I suppose if it's all results based. If Openda had actually taken a shot and scored there, then we'd be talking very differently about Liverpool's control of the game. But yeah, for the most part, they did control it, and that's kind of what they will be obviously looking to do against Arsenal.
How much of an impact does Jota missing out and Nunez playing instead have on Liverpool? Obviously, he scored in the Champions League midweek, and that's good for him, good for his confidence. Does it alter them as a proper proposition against an Arsenal team in particular, or not?
I don't know about against Arsenal, but I'm interested to see how Nunez sort of fits into this calmer, controlled, disciplined Liverpool team.
Yes.
Yeah. Because as Nick's reaction suggests, there he's quite the opposite.
Yes.
So yeah, obviously,
but you need a bit of light and shade, don't you?
Maybe that's exactly what Arne Slot's thinking. But yeah, of course you're going to miss Jota. Apart from Salah, he's their best finisher. But that's why they've got 6 first choice forwards this season to slot in and rotate as and when. But yeah, it shouldn't impact them too much. I mean, Liverpool's numbers are ridiculous. We've gone about their defensive numbers, but their attacking numbers are just as good. They've created more XG than anybody else. And yeah, I don't think Jota being out should impact them too much.
I wonder whether, obviously Nunez did play in midweek. I wonder whether with everything we've said about wanting to control it, whether Cody Gakpo will play through the middle. I know he's, broadly speaking, when he's come on, it's and when he's played, it's been off the left, but he can play through the middle. I think he's better off the left, but he is a slightly more predictable player than Nunez, and that's maybe what they will go for.
Yeah, I think Nunez is a good bench option.
Yeah.
And you got Gakpo, Salah and Luis Diaz to sort of rotate and do stuff.
I think working theory that Nunez is actually better off the left as well. He only for Liverpool he's only really played through the middle, I think, but
and he's had joy againch Arsenal from the left from memory last season.
Yeah, he tends to play through the middle, but for Benfica, a lot of his, if you watch a lot of his highlights, a lot of the damage he did was kind of coming in off the left. So I had a piece in mind for quite a long time about players who are misjudged based on their physiques, because he looks like a centre forward, but I think he's possibly better off.
We've mentioned Liverpool's great defensive record a number of times, but it is worth just sort of sticking a flag in the fact that they have only conceded 3 goals in 8 games. And Virgil van Dijk, he's had a couple of different partners, but him and Konate at the moment, the fact that Kelleher has come in and done well in the absence of Alisson as well, we have to give them some praise for being able to do what they're doing. And obviously, we'll see at the next international break if those numbers are quite so exceptional when they come up against a whole load of better teams. And this visit in particular against Arsenal is going to be their strongest test, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. If we're discounting Nottingham Forest, of course. But
we are.
But yes, yeah. Just casually discounting the only team to beat Liverpool so far. Are we? No. Okay,
well,
fine.
I didn't mention it earlier on, but it is like being sat opposite Brian Clough, with you wearing that green as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to take that.
Oh, yeah, that is Brian Clough green, isn't it?
It is Brian Clough green.
Is that deliberate?
It isn't. No. Just maybe
subconscious,
subliminal.
Subliminal.
Why I bought the T-shirt.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, it certainly will be. I think it was. I know people spoke a lot about the Chelsea result being a kind of a real marker for Slot, which it kind of was, but and because Chelsea have been much better than most people expected, I think, this season. But obviously, even if they get a draw at Arsenal, I think then that will be the real kind of maybe this is the real thing.
What's going to happen in the game, Tim? Prediction.
Crikey. It's a great question. It's difficult to predict, what with a few injuries for Arsenal, and we haven't seen Slot's Liverpool against a top team yet.
Mm-hmm.
I reckon... Nick thinks it's going to be really boring. That might be a good shout. I don't know.
Okay. That's cool. Thanks anyway.
What a run-up that was to just say, don't know, mate.
Yeah.
1-1 then. 1-1.
1-1?
Yeah.
2-1 Liverpool.
Right, let's look at the other games this weekend. Manchester City up against Southampton. Well, if Southampton can do what Wolves did last week, right up until the last minute, then Southampton might have a chance. The question is, can Southampton do what Wolves did? Tim?
I would say no, because Wolves had 22% possession against Manchester City, which is not what Southampton planned to do. I'm still not really over that game, actually. It was a weird one. When the goal went in 95th minute, I don't think I've ever reacted like this before.
Oh.
But I laughed manically, like a superhero sort of villain kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just thought it was hilarious. Because it's just gone beyond funny. Do you know what I mean?
Is this what was the source of this kind of mirthless?
But I guess we've had this horrific season, and then everybody expects us to get walloped by Man City, and then we get to the 95th minute, 1-1. I was just...
Were you alone?
Yes, I was alone. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, obviously, neutral side of things. Yeah, you feel sorry for Wolves, but to be honest, no one was expecting you to get anything anyway. So.
No, and
we just move on.
No, from Gary O'Neill's point of view, there was a right way to lose that game, and I think he's added a little bit more time to his tenure with the way that Wolves performed that day.
As for Southampton, collapsed after having their moment where they thought they were going to be turning things around against Leicester. I mean, I do fear for them going to Manchester City from a Watford fan who has been to Manchester City and seen a side concede 5 goals in, I think it was 17 minutes, and then lose 8-0. Southampton.
And the cup final, don't forget that one.
Oh, yeah, the cup final as well. Yeah.
Wow, really picking at old wounds today.
Yeah, but they are capable of completely deconstructing a team that's not very good. And Southampton are showing that they do have significant defensive frailties.
Yeah, you kind of instinctively think, given maybe this is just given that Southampton have conceded 9 goals in 2 games in relatively recent history, but you sort of you wonder whether this could be the game. This could be the double figures game. Finally,
no,
but
really.
Well,
I was going to say the opposite. My hot take is they'll do better against a better team. I think they'll enjoy themselves.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't think they were pretty close in it against Arsenal. Did well against. They lost 1-0 to Newcastle. The signs are there.
The signs are there.
I don't know.
I think they've got a good performance in them, and it's gonna.
I think that they'll try their passing out the back thing, and City will press them viciously, and it could be ugly. I mean, I actually think I suspect it won't be kind of 9 or double figures or whatever, but because I suspect City will kind of get to score 5, get to an hour, and then just kind of knock it around for a bit. Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
I enjoy you. I like your faith in Southampton.
Well, you've done a very good deep dive into Southampton recently, so you're definitely more qualified to discuss them than me.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't quite go that far. I sort of outsourced all the tactical stuff to Liam Tharm because
he's good for that, isn't he?
Because he's very good, and I don't. usually don't have as firm a grip on that kind of thing as Liam does. But yeah, the piece was kind of less saying this is why Southampton should carry on like this, but more explaining why Russell Martin is so sort of dogmatic about how he plays. But yeah, I don't think that's going to serve them particularly well against Man City.
400 to 1 you can get for 10-0.
Well, there you go.
Let's not talk about 10-0. Come on. Let's hope that maybe Southampton can run Manchester City as close as bottom of the lot Wolves did, who still only have 1 point. Aston Villa are in 4th currently, top of the Champions League. They take on Bournemouth. Obviously, this weekend isn't going to decide what happens in the league placings, obviously, because it will only be after 9 games. But is there a chance that Unai Emery finishes above Arsenal this season? And do you think that some little fire in him is thinking, I would love that?
I don't think they will, but I don't know. Do you think that's his motivation to kind of get one back on?
I don't know. I asked you the question.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, you did, didn't you? And then I just flipped it back on you. Probably not.
Shall I ask you a better question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How impressed have you been with how Aston Villa have dealt so far? And it's sort of creeping on and on and on. That they are dealing with the pressure of Champions League and league.
Yeah, it was really impressive how they kind of they obviously the correct question that people have been asking about how they would deal with the Premier League, with the Champions League, is the depth of their squad. But they made quite a few changes, and not all enforced changes for the Champions League in midweek, and still won. So that was kind of really impressive. I know the changes didn't even necessarily weaken their sort of starting lineup. John Duran played instead of Ollie Watkins, and people have been wondering what he would do if he had a starting chance at some point. So it wasn't quite like he was resting players. We'll knock off this easy game in Europe and then get down to the proper business of the Premier League kind of thing. But it was pretty impressive how they did manage to kind of make these changes and not really seem to suffer for it. So this sort of bodes well. I mean, it will change. It was obviously good for them that they had John McGinn back, and it will change if they have a few more key injuries to key players. But that was all really encouraging.
Brighton are in 5th. And they've got a chance to consolidate that position because they are taking on Wolves. I guess, they just have to sort of
turn up
and but it'll be interesting to see the opposition that Brighton face, whether Wolves will be able to sort of pick themselves up off the ground after that late defeat.
I guess so. In the eyes of Wolves fans, this is sort of the last of the tough fixtures before they get really,
you're still banging
really
on about
easy.
The tough, right?
We're all waiting for Palace at home. Which is the day before
it.
The day before Gary Neal's going to get sacked, probably more likely than anything, rather than the day the season starts. So it's the last game I would want as a Wolves fan, which I am, is Brighton away. Not got the best record there, lost 6-0 there a couple of years ago, and Brighton just look sumptuous. It's going to be another season of how do they do it.
Behind Brighton in 5th, Chelsea will be hoping, obviously, to get back on track after defeat at Anfield. Take on Newcastle. Do we feel that Chelsea, out of those two sides, are more likely to be really genuinely challenging for the top 5, maybe 4?
Yeah, obviously lost to Brighton last time. I just don't think. I'm not really sure what it is that's the problem. They've got some injuries. I don't think Anthony Gordon's been quite as good as he was last season. He has had to play in a slightly unfamiliar position due to those injury problems. But
he's been getting chances, but not taking them.
Yeah, I don't know whether the footballers are they're quite delicate sometimes, aren't they? Like the idea, if you kind of said, well, the reason this guy isn't playing as well as he was before is that he's playing like 15 yards further to the right than he usually does. That doesn't sound, you you'd sort of give him a slap around the face and tell him to pull himself together. But it is a kind of issue that that it's just a completely different role that he's playing, and it clearly is. Whether that is the main problem, whether he's just going through some poor form, but yeah, he's not been as good as he was last season. Certainly.
Well, I think they're a bit over reliant on him. Isak's not the player he was last season at all.
He's just come back, hasn't he?
Yeah, of course, missed a couple of good chances last weekend, but they're a bit imbalanced because on the right side they've got Murphy or Almiron, neither of whom are really pulling up any trees. So this is the sort of after effects of their poor summer and not being able to sign any players. This is what's going to happen. On
the poor summer thing, they are now. It seems to be sort of a slight existential crisis that the players that they had to sell. So Minter at Brighton and particularly Elliot Anderson. Elliot Anderson was brilliant for Forest against Crystal Palace on Monday, and it seems to have provoked lots of kind of, oh my God, why did we sell this guy? We should have just taken the points deduction kind of thing, which may or may not be the case, but doesn't look enormously promising for them at the moment.
Playing an unfamiliar role in the table, I think you could say, is Crystal Palace, because they are really struggling at the moment. Mm-hmm. Third from bottom. They take on Spurs. Are you feeling that Palace are going to get out of this, or are they in there for the long run in this relegation scrap?
I'm. Who were you worried about earlier? Southampton. I'm worried about Crystal Palace.
Are you?
Yeah. I think they're going through a bit of an identity crisis. Every team's got to have an identity in 2024. I don't know what theirs is really. They've stopped dribbling. They don't dribble anymore. They don't take any players on.
They've been shooting lots of shots from distance.
Lots of shots distance. Yeah. They've lost Elise, obviously a huge blow, and Wharton is out and might need surgery, I was reading the other day, which isn't good because it seemed like they're designing their whole game plan around him in terms of controlling the midfield and playing through balls. So yeah, without those players and without a good summer again of recruitment and doing things like playing Eddie Nketiah on the wing and not having any, and Nathaniel Klein at left wing back was saw the other week, it's all a bit of a mess. And Glasner doesn't seem too happy. Glasner doesn't seem too happy. Right.
Yeah, so he hasn't cut a happy figure all season.
No, and he's kind of criticised the players a little bit and said, they might have thought this was going to be an easy season because of the way that they finished last season. So, none of it bodes well.
The game on Monday, from a Forest perspective anyway, it was Forest scored and then not too long after that brought on changed formation to go kind of 3/5 at the back, and you were kind of, from a Forest supporting perspective, I got quite nervous. I think, well, this is going to be a long last 10-15 minutes. But Palace did very little, and it was surprisingly comfortable, which is, as Tim says, pretty worrying from their point of view. That they just not just that they didn't score, it didn't really look like they were going to. They had a couple of long shots. I think Eza had one.
Eza had a couple. Nketiah hit the bar as well, didn't he?
Yeah, because that was quite early on in the game, and then Eza had a shot that Matt Sells sort of tipped over the bar.
Oh yes,
quite.
It's a great save. It
was a fantastic save, but it wasn't. If you wonder whether that brilliant run that they had at the end of last season, obviously they were just so incredible to watch. Specifically, Eza and Michael Elise. From that perspective, you wonder whether there is much of a plan here, or whether they were just kind of, riding these two brilliant players to that incredible run, and now they've lost one of them. It's all on Eza. He was the only player that, again, from a Forest perspective, I was scared of, and they didn't have a huge amount else really.
Manchester United, they're down in 12th. Up against West Ham in 15th. Obviously, Manchester United bumped into Jose Mourinho in midweek, and it was all pretty sort of low key. Nothing really happened with him. Both sides, in terms of the Premier League action, just one win in 7. And let's just quickly check in with Andy Mitten, Carl Anker, speaking to Ian Irving on our Manchester United pod, Talk of the Devils.
I don't have that much confidence in Manchester United at the moment. I'm sorry. I know there are injuries, but again, it's a team which struggles to score. I keep hoping the team will turn the corner.
Yeah, West Ham 1 win in 7. Manchester United 1 win in 7.
United have to win, if only because we joke about this. about the crisis baton, about how every weekend one Premier League club is in crisis. And it really does feel like whoever loses this game, they're going to be in the hot seat for however long. And I think Ten Hag will absolutely want to get a positive performance here. So maybe some of that worrisome question marks can be turned over to Lopetegui instead of onto him.
Do you think it's that easy? Because I see even, Manchester United win, they're probably not that far away from another crisis next week. I mean, the expectation for Manchester United will be that they should be beating West Ham. Yes, that might then put Julian Lopetegui in even more difficult... Oh, bums. My phone. At least it will make me ask a quicker question, isn't it? I wanted to ask you about the crisis baton, Tim, because I see both of these sides holding the crisis baton, and even if they win, they might sort of still have it in their arms in a couple of weeks' time.
Well, United are either in crisis or trying not to be in crisis, and never far from crisis. They're just constantly swimming against the tide.
Yeah.
And even, Brentford last week, they went 1-0 down, and yeah, sure, good comeback win, and then in midweek, okay, they didn't beat Fenerbahce, who they should be beating, and yet people think it's a good point, Fenerbahce away. Well, no, they still haven't won in Europe yet. They haven't won in Europe for a year. Incredible. So no, I think if they lose this, they're back firmly in crisis mode again.
Yeah.
But I don't really see... Well, West Ham are at home here, but I don't really see them as being capable of beating many teams at the moment. They're in crisis too, Adam.
Yeah, if we're all adopting a team that we're concerned about, then I'm going to take West Ham.
Yeah.
Because they seem to find new and interesting ways to be hilariously calamitous. They got one win. Yeah, they were just saying one win in the last 7, but everything else has been, last weekend the method of imploding was go ahead and then concede 3 goals in 8 minutes, I think it was. And then get a man sent off for slapping multiple opponents around the face.
Which the referee was almost slapped by Kudus and still didn't send him off. Like, he needed 4 whole minutes for that to be deemed a red card. It was absolutely ludicrous. Slapped 2 players. The ref saw it.
Yeah.
West Ham strike me as a team that maybe in a couple of months with a different manager might be heading in the right direction.
But they've got these deeper systemic issues where they've got Tim Steiden signing players who Julian Lopetegui isn't playing. So Somerville's been on the bench, Marc Soler hasn't played, Fulkrug I know's been injured, but question marks over whether he's the right fit for the money they're paid for a 31-year-old. So yeah, there's a lot of deep issues there and a lot of unhappy fans. I think you give Lopetegui 18 months and a couple of transfer windows and he'll sort them out, but might not get that long.
2 other games, quick mentions on Everton against Fulham. Obviously, Everton have a bigger test this weekend than they did against Ipswich, who looked a little bit like relegation scrappers last week against Everton and sort of uncharacteristic defensive mistakes as well. Do you see Everton sort of pulling away now? You see them safe for this season?
Yeah, I think this will be a sort of fairly stodgy, maybe 2-0 win for Everton. I don't think they'll be particularly good, but there are also much worse teams in the division than them. And
Ipswich go to Brentford. If it was Ipswich against Brentford, you might back them because Brentford can't win away. But Brentford at home is a tough proposition for anyone.
Yeah, they've got a really good home record. Stuck 5 past my boys the other week.
I mean, that's just a false economy if you base it on that, isn't it? Come on.
That was like the laugh I did when Man City scored. I'm going to this game actually.
Oh, are you?
I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing Ipswich. I think there's more to them than meets the eye, and I think they had a good summer window. And again, it's about blooding some of their
they were spending money like it was going out of fashion this week.
I think they're one of those that just need a bit of time for all that to gel.
Yeah.
And there's more to come from them. And I don't think they're certs for relegation.
No.
I think they'll be sort of here and there.
A quick one on that then. Who are your bottom 3? Who's going down?
Oh, well, God.
Come on.
Quickly, you said.
Yeah.
I still think Leicester will go down.
Yeah.
I think Southampton will go down.
Yeah.
And Crystal Palace.
Oh, Palace. Really? There's no team in there that... Okay, so Wolves aren't going down. Good. They're going to make a miraculous recovery. Your bottom 3?
That's quite tedious because I think that might be my bottom 3 as well. Although
I think
Nick speaks a lot of sense. I've always said that.
No, I think that's interesting that both of you have Palace to go down, because that would be quite a big story, I think, for Crystal Palace to go down from the Premier League.
Don't know where the goals come from. They're just all a bit confused at the moment, I think. And they sold the best defender as well to a mid-table rival, which is very silly.
Yeah, it was a bit odd for that to happen. That's it for this week. Thank you very much to Tim.
Cheers.
And to Nick.
Thank you.
And don't forget, you can check out the whole range of Athletic podcasts, from the Daily Briefing, you've got the Totally Football Show, all of the shows throughout the week, of course, on the Athletic FC. And we've got all our club pods as well. Thank you very much for listening, for watching on YouTube as well. Do send us your suggestions and your comments, and we will be back on Monday. Have a lovely weekend, everyone. Take care.
If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcasts from.